Romans by Nick Schroeder. So the Romans, Augustine, Martin Luther, John Wesley, they all came to faith in Jesus or had their faith renewed reading through Romans, which is really cool. Letter to the Romans focused on God's redemptive plan within the church. The word God occurs 153 times. The word law, Christ, sin, Lord, and faith are other words that are used very, very frequently. Paul shows that Jesus has human origin, but also eternal existence. And when he says Jesus Lord, it's referring to a deity in Yahweh. Paul didn't start a church in Rome, but knew people that were there and hoped to visit them very soon. And his motto really is the saying, "I am ready." And so then he goes into Jesus spoke to the Pharisees in the same way of warning against self-righteousness and judgment on others. And he also says when we judge others, we subject ourselves to the same standard. Goodness is God's kindness to us in regard to our past sin. Forbearance is to present sin, and long-suffering to our future sin. Goodness of God leads us to repentance, or definitely should lead us to repentance. And so Romans is organized into 4 parts. Chapter 1 through 4, then 5 through 8, 9 through 11, and 12 through 16. And parts are differently in style and focus, but central thought weaves through the whole letter of Romans. Paul quotes Genesis a lot, Exodus, Deuteronomy, Psalms, and Isaiah as well. The word God occurs more in Romans than any other letter, like I said before. God was always working through Israel to reveal the self to the rest of the world. There were many religious groups in that area at that time of the early church, so they did not think they were starting a new religion, but they were continuing what God had been doing. And Paul focuses on death and resurrection of Jews to show how Jesus really was the Messiah. I'll go back first to start out the Romans chapter 1 through 4. Paul, we all know that Paul was part of the Pharisees, but also the governor of Rome had Jewish exile from the city for 5 years. So when they came back to the church, it was divided between Jew and Gentile. In chapter 1 through 4, it was the story of how all humanity was corrupt and separated for themselves from God, and the resolution of human mess was Jesus in justification. And Abraham's covenant with God shows that God is for the people to be part of the family of God. Even a cool fact is that Jewish residents made up only 5% of Roman residents. And what you need to know about Romans is that Abraham and the Davidic line of king, they was all represented, and the relationship of the law to the saved and the unsaved, and the commands leading to sanctification, the know, reckon, or yield, and the responsibilities to body, spiritual gift, church, and the unsaved. And Paul was most likely on the 3rd missionary journey. And the theme was basic gospel of God's plan of salvation. And Paul wrote to prepare the way for his visit and explain the relationship between different people groups. And it is probably the most systemic of all of Paul's letters. It is very widespread use of Old Testament quotations, which is really cool. In Paul's explanation in Romans, Paul shows how everyone is saved by faith like Abraham did, not just by circumcision. Paul shows how the Torah told him what was right, but it could not transform him to do what was right. Only through Jesus could there be freedom from life of sin. Paul points out that both Jews and Gentiles have been in God's family by grace. And Paul, like I said, was a Roman citizen. And Paul may have had freed Roman slaves as his parents, or ancestors did. And so that is the book of Romans by Nick Schroeder.